Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be discussing CBBC. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with CBBC. In the off chance that you're new here and that you aren't, it's a children's channel here in the UK that's run by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. It first existed as a strand all the way back in the 1980s and then got its own dedicated channel during the early 2000s, which it primarily exists on today. Now, children's TV here in the UK has been under some strain, a bit of a threat for quite some years now as the trend continues towards the digital streaming age and also different platforms like YouTube and specifically short form places that prioritize that short form content like TikTok, for example. Traditional children's TV, as maybe my generation and the generations before came to know it, has been under fire. And CBBC, we know, is apparently meant to be going online only, potentially within the next year. We covered this all the way back in 2022 when it was first announced or, dropped that certain channels like CBBC, for example, would be moving online within the future. But it's continued to trundle on. It did have a whole revamp to its presentation in 2023, mainly to keep in line with the whole BBC brand, but nevertheless, they could have just left it if they wanted to. But no, they reskinned everything. The idents look quite nice. We did take a look at them at the time. So what is the reason for talking about them today? Well, I came across this article from Deadline, and like other places we've looked at, like RXTV and TV Zone, they do great articles about the media world, so go and check them out if you fancy that stuff. And they say more layoffs hit BBC Kids department as CBBC production is revamped. So let's get into it, see what's going on. Another round of layoffs has hit the BBC Children's and Education Department after a revamp to the production of the CBBC studio. A consultation in Salford's Media City has started, and 11 roles are set to be closed after a decision was made to outsource the presentation links between shows on the popular kids channel, so they're told. These presentation links used to take place in the iconic broom cupboard, that was way back in like the 80s and stuff, but they're now done in the CBBC studio as channel favourites like Hacker T-Dog announce shows and take part in mini skits. This will be something very familiar to anyone who grew up with CBBC during any point of its life. So between the different programs that would be shown for kids, you'd often cut to some kind of studio, whether that was the broom cupboard of the 80s and 90s to the studio they would eventually get. And there you'd have the presenters. You'd also have various characters, often taking the form of puppets. And they would do these little skits sometimes between programs, often relating to what was coming up, or they'd run competitions, give shout-outs for people's birthdays, all that sort of stuff. And that is a trend that has vastly continued to the present day. Even, I remember looking at the relaunch in 2023, and you still had a studio that was revamped as well. You had real presenters. You also had the puppets as well. One of the puppets I remember from back in the day, we're talking like 2007 now, was Outshow, the little cactus puppet. Really loved Outshow back in the day. Hacker, though, has had a long life, hasn't he? I think he got first introduced around, was it like 2009, something like that? And 15 years later, he's still going strong. You'll see him pop up in memes, in different videos. We saw a video with him with the new culture secretary recently. We've also got the iconic meme.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
Which is great. He also apparently now does DJ sets for universities around the country, which is really crazy, but also really cool.
Woo! Normal men, innocent men.
So Hacker is a well-known face around the UK now. I mean, he's been doing it for so long. So what do these cuts potentially mean? Well, they're saying it's to outsource the presentation links. Now, we'll see if the article confirms it. I'm not sure whether they mean they're outsourcing the staff, so like, the people behind the camera, if they're going to hire staff in rather than have people on payroll, or if the whole, idea of the presentation links, if the whole, like the setup of them, the skit aspect and all that, if that's going to be taken over completely. And does that mean we're going to have new presenters? Does that mean Hacker's finally going to bid us adieu? Let's see if the article gives us a bit of clarity. It does mention that production on the CBeebies presentation links, including the famous bedtime stories, is going to remain the same. CBeebies in all of this, just to touch on them for a second, in all of this talk of, going online, moving away from traditional TV, CBeebies has been quite absent from that. Even in the original thing in 2022, it did say that CBeebies would very much be remaining on traditional TV, and I think there's a few reasons for that. With CBeebies mainly aiming at that preschool audience. Let's face it, an audience that won't have access to smart devices, won't have access to the internet. You know, they're sort of exposed to what their parents decide to expose them to. And CBeebies, ever since it launched back in 2002, has been a great way for parents with those really young kids to engage in television content that is engaging for them, but also can be really educational for them. You know, it's been championing that for over 2 decades now. So I think moving them online would actually do CBeebies more of a disservice. So no surprise that it's staying on traditional TV. And I'm glad to see that the presentation links aren't being cut as well, because I'd argue for CBeebies, they're arguably more vital than they are for CBBC. Continuing on then, it says the move is a second phase of a set of changes brought in last year following an 18-month structural review into BBC Children's, the first of which saw around 25 leave the department, which was revealed by Deadline all the way back in February of 2023. And I must have missed this at the time. I can't remember if I touched on this or not. This would have been around the time of the big revamp to CBBC, around that time. It said at the time there was a voluntary redundancy process that commenced. Staff were informed, affected staff were spoken with individually as well. And the layoffs were within the presentation subdivision, which promotes the kids' content via links and resources, and the educational production subdivision, which will see a senior leadership restructure. And, you know, the BBC have been making layoffs across the board recently, you know, across all their departments. They're having to save hundreds of millions of pounds due to other factors we've talked about before, like the license fee freeze, high inflation, all that sort of stuff. So it is always a shame that more jobs are having to be lost, but it seems like this one for CBBC is just the latest in what's sadly looking to be an ever-increasing line. The presentation links will be outsourced and put out to tender next month, supported by a reduced in-house team. So put out to tender, for those who aren't familiar with the jargon, I believe that means they're basically putting out there, seeing which company wants to take it up, and they're going to have a smaller in-house team who will help them along with producing that or assist that transition. A similar outsourcing decision was taken over popular BBC kids show Blue Peter earlier this year. I did not know that. So Blue Peter's outsourced now in terms of its production, but they still kept the presenters the same, right? So that makes me think that the presenters on CBBC will remain the same. So Hacker's not going anywhere by the look of it. And I had a quick check of Hacker's socials as well, and I can't seem to see any mention of him, you know, stepping away from CBBC or anything like that. It says another 11 roles will be created to support BBC Children's focus on animation commissions and content production for the Bite-Sized Future strategy. Animation has been a key plank of the department boss Patricia Hidalgo's strategy since she took over. And there has been, you know, all these animation commissions. I think more animation is great. Animation is such an undervalued art form still, which is crazy when you think about it. So I think more animations, like different styles of animation, the different techniques you can use to create it, and original animation commissions as well, rather than just repeats or buying things in from abroad. I think that's a great step forward. The Bite-Sized Futures doesn't surprise me either, because they've said before that the Bite-Size division for them has been working really well. A Bite-Size is a source where kids can learn to revise, they can prepare for tests, prepare for exams. It's truly a crucial resource. It's one I used even back in the day when I was at high school. I found it a great thing to have, so no wonder that they're looking at creating more roles for that. BBC Children's hits include the likes of Hey Dougie, Oliver Twist adaptation Dodger, and Nicholas Winding references The Famous Five. So they are having more hits. Hey Dougie is huge. The Oliver Twist adaptation Dodger, I've heard great reviews about that as well. This is the second phase of changes that were announced to staff in February 2023 to deliver our creative ambitions for children's and education, allowing us to make savings but also reinvesting so we can deliver more value for audiences across the UK, said a BBC spokeswoman. These decisions are never easy, but we aim to make these savings as far as is possible through voluntary redundancy. And as I said, redundancies or people losing their jobs is always awful. I guess when they're saying they're trying to adapt to this more like digital-led strategy and the different ambitions and stuff like that, everything has to change. You know, just because we're so familiar with something, we hold nostalgia for something we love, it can't always stay that way. You know, life changes, things change, conditions change. So if the BBC is adapting CBBC to try and have the best chance it can in this new era of TV, particularly if it is going to be moved online, then, you know, they have to do what they have to do. But it is just sad that the presentation team, which has long been a staple of CBBC, is being slimmed down. Because that is such a thing with kids' channels here in the UK. You don't see that on the main channels, you know, like BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4. Between their programmes, they'll have continuity announcements, you know, the voiceovers you hear whilst the idents play, but they don't have in-person links. You know, obviously there's not sketches, there's not someone in front of you introducing the next programme. Whereas kids' TV, that was so that was ubiquitous. You know, it was always great to see your favorite presenter, whatever era you grew up in, introducing the next program, often with a skit as well. Like, the CBBC have been doing that for decades. I remember that so clearly. And I think my era, you know, I was around, say, 2000 to 2007 was when I was really watching CBBC quite a lot, from the ages of about, what was I, like 4 to 11, something like that. And the presenters often were half the fun. It was great to see them, all the different skits, the little games they play in between. Toonattic, which was a block on ITV at the weekends, they were arguably sometimes more fun than the actual cartoons or programs that they showed. Having the host engage in all sorts of fun, wacky stuff. They had such high energy. It's just having presenters, having those links, I'd argue, is a fundamental part of the UK children's television scene. But is it going to be for the next generation? I've already talked about how a lot more kids are going to YouTube, going to TikTok. Attention spans are getting shorter. You know, people want really short content. They can barely sit through like a 20-minute cartoon, even if that. So I wonder if the younger generations now, and if if you've got kids or nieces or nephews, cousins, please ask them, because I'd be curious to know. I wonder, for those younger generations, do they find the presentation links a bit boring, or do they find them a bit unnecessary? Do they just want to move like you do on YouTube and TikTok? You know, what do you do when you get bored of something or you finish? You scroll. I wonder if they tune into CBBC, do they just want to skip past the presentation links entirely? Because traditional television, one of its great flaws is that you can't watch what you want. You are bound by the time schedule, and it's going to run as it's been planned. And it seems for the current generation, especially kids, that doesn't really work for them as it worked for us. But we didn't grow up with that freedom of choice. Upon publishing its July annual report, the BBC said it would lay off 500 more staff by March 2026 as its deficit ballooned. The corporation has been battling with heightened competition, soaring costs, and a barely rising licence fee. Earlier this month, it was revealed that around 1/5 of the 500 will come from local news teams outside of London. So it's not just CBBC, there are a lot of different departments that are suffering at the minute. Speaking yesterday at RTS London, former BBC chair Richard Sharp said Director General Tim Davie needs to keep making tough decisions in order for the corporation to be able to spend on more TV shows. And I think its 2024 slate of TV shows have been doing quite well. You know, you've had big programs like Race Across the World, The Traitors, Doctor Who, a whole bunch of programs that have not done really well just in the UK, but also internationally. So I understand the desire to spend more on programs like that and commissioning new programs as well that will hopefully do just as well. But I guess it's like in any business, if you want to invest more money into something, that's got to come from somewhere. And if it ain't coming from different earnings, then it's going to be pulled from other departments. Ultimately, I think this is a sadly inevitable step for CBBC, because if they haven't really commented on it further, but say 2025 rolls around right next year, say we are going online only, CBBC will be taken off traditional TV, and the only way you'll be able to access it is through the iPlayer or through a dedicated CBBC website, right? Say that happens. If that is where they're going, they are going to slim down the amount of people who are on staff. The outsourcing, no doubt, is probably going to be cheaper than having people on payroll. There's further business things as well, which probably means it's a cheaper thing for the BBC to do. I do believe if they do go online only, that you can maintain the presentation links, but I mean, whether or not they will, we'll have to see. Because some would say if it's going online only, will CBBC still be bound by a set time schedule, even though you know it's online only? Or will it be complete freedom of choice, like a streaming service, where you just be able to pick and choose what you want to watch when? I imagine there will still be a schedule of some sort, but I guess the need would be, will there still be presentation links? I'd hope there will be. I'd argue they don't really suit the online world as much as they do traditional TV, but they're just such a key part of it, man. I know I'm spouting like, don't hold on to nostalgia or anything like that, but I think it's just a core part of what makes UK Kids TV, the presentation links with the presenters, with the different characters, with the skits. It's integral. And I think if we lose that, if CBBC moves online, then we really are in like the death knell of UK Kids TV, in terms of there might still be great quality content being pumped out there. Again, the original animation commissions that they're doing. There's high quality imported programs they show, like Bluey, for example, which has taken the world by storm. So there's still potential for good stuff to get out there. But if there's no presentation links, if we lose that key part of CBBC's identity, then how different is it actually then from any other streaming site that doesn't offer it? How different is it going to be from your Netflix, from your Disney Plus, even competitors like ITVX? How different is it really going to be if we lose lose that key part of its personality. As I said, Hacker T-Dog, who's like the main character on CBBC, is quite popular, so I'd like to think they're not going to ditch him in a hurry. Who knows? Maybe they'll go to a system where it's only Hacker doing the presentation links. Maybe they'll do away with humans entirely. Maybe they'll be reduced to, a room in the BBC, not a studio, with a backdrop. Hacker's going to show up, speak for 30 seconds before the next programme. It might well come to that, really. I hope it doesn't, but we'll just have to wait and see going forward, because ever since that initial announcement, they've been quite quiet in regards to CBBC going online. 2025 was projected as the earliest date. It could be later than that. I mean, that'll be a huge migration for them to do. We'll just have to wait and see over the next 12 months. But yeah, that is all for this video. I just wanted to talk about this because I know a lot of you hold CBBC, just children's TV in the UK, you hold near and dear to your heart. And I just think, more cuts is sad, but is it going to help in the transition to digital, whether that happens? Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting to cover. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think this is going to go for them? Let me know all that in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We'd love to have you aboard. In the meantime, I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
No. Monsieur Pamplemousse is a French chef. No, yeah, you must have got confused. We both have moustaches. Okay, bye. Oh, what a mix-up. What's that?
Oh, yeah, Boundy.
That is not a picture of me.
What? It is.
That is a picture of Adolf Hitler.
What?
You can't put a picture of Adolf Hitler on children's television, especially not BAFTA award-winning Children's Channel of the Year.
Oh.
You're saying that I look like one of the world's biggest murderers. Hitler was one of the history's most evil men. He was a massive, massive criminal. I do not look like him. You've gone too far this time. Right, let me assure you, people of Britain, that my moustache is going to be big, bold and beautiful. Now hush while I admire it.
Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Bruce Danton, Derek Chambers, Shaun Knock, Daud Khan, Liam De-Maine, Trev Hughes, Ajmac 200017, Deck, Evan Hart 41, Jen, Traffi, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Ted Elliott, Marnanel Thurman, John Wakefield, Kieran Bolton, and 40-something Manchild, our AMTV staff members.